Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the book of Ecclesiastes,
Yeah.
specifically chapters 7 through 9.
Oh, great.
We're going to be talking about life's big questions, like what it means to live well,
Hmm.
even when facing tough stuff, like suffering and death. Yeah. So get ready for some ancient wisdom that feels surprisingly relevant today.
Ecclesiastes really isn't afraid to ask those hard-hitting questions
Yeah.
about purpose and happiness,
Yeah.
even the ones that make us squirm a bit.
Right from the start, Ecclesiastes throws us a curveball
Yeah.
with this whole idea of wisdom versus foolishness.
Hmm.
There's this line that really stopped me in my tracks.
Okay.
It says, "A good name is better than good oil, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth."
Wow.
It's powerful, but honestly, it kind of left me wondering, like, what
Yeah.
does it really mean for us?
It's like a challenge to our modern values, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of chasing wealth and possessions,
Mm-hmm.
it suggests that a good reputation built on integrity and actions,
Yeah.
that's what truly matters.
So it's more about the impact we have on others,
Hmm.
the kind of legacy we leave behind,
Exactly.
than just like what we accumulate.
Yeah. And when Ecclesiastes says the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth,
Right.
it's not, promoting a morbid outlook or anything.
Yeah.
It's framing death as the natural conclusion of a life well lived.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on the quality of our years, not just the quantity.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like saying the true measure of a life is the mark we leave on the world, not just, how long we're here.
Exactly.
That-
And that focus on inner quality
Yeah.
over outward appearances continues in chapter 7, verse 3.
Okay.
It says, sorrow is better than laughter.
Oh, wow.
For when a face is sad, a heart may be happy.
Okay.
This one really got me thinking. It reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe true happiness isn't always about, flashy displays of joy,
Yeah.
but about those moments of quiet reflection,
Yeah.
even sadness,
Okay.
where we can really grapple with life's truths and find inner peace.
I'm starting to see how Ecclesiastes kind of encourages us to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
to question those assumptions we have
Mm-hmm.
about what brings true fulfillment.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And this ties into another major theme,
Okay.
the limits of human knowledge.
This is where I found myself nodding along. Ecclesiastes was reading my mind.
Yeah.
Chapter 8, verse 7 says, "If no one knows what will happen, who can tell him when it will happen?"
Mm.
I mean, haven't we all felt that frustration of not knowing what the future holds?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to plan and control everything, only to be reminded that some things are simply beyond our grasp.
Absolutely. That verse highlights the inherent uncertainty of life.
Yeah.
It's a humbling reminder that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
And perhaps,
Yeah.
that's okay. We can plan, prepare, but ultimately surrendering to the unknown is part of the human experience.
So how does Ecclesiastes suggest we navigate that tension? Between our desire for control
Yeah.
and the reality that so much is out of our hands.
That's where the concept of wisdom comes in.
Okay.
But we'll dive deeper into that in a bit.
Yeah.
First, I think we need to grapple with another thorny issue
Okay.
that Ecclesiastes raises.
Okay.
The seeming randomness of good and evil.
This is the part that really challenged me.
Yeah.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Right.
And vice versa. It just feels so unfair.
It's a question that has haunted humanity for ages.
Yeah.
And Ecclesiastes doesn't shy away from this.
Yeah.
In chapter 7, verse 15, it says, there is a righteous person who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked person who prolongs his life in his wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make sense of this seeming contradiction?
Yeah.
Especially if we believe in a just and loving God.
That's what I kept wrestling with as I was reading these passages. On the one hand, we're told that God is just and righteous. But then we see examples in the world that seem to contradict that.
Right. And Ecclesiastes doesn't provide easy answers or pat explanations.
No.
It seems to encourage a deeper, more nuanced understanding of God's justice.
Okay.
One that might operate on a different timeline.
Yeah.
Or with a different perspective than our limited human understanding.
Okay.
You know, it invites us to grapple with the mystery of faith.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that sometimes we simply don't have all the answers.
So maybe it's less about finding like a definitive solution to this age-old problem
Yeah.
and more about just acknowledging that the nature of good and evil and how it plays out in the world is a mystery that we might never fully comprehend.
Exactly.
It requires a degree of humility on our part, recognizing that there are limits to our understanding
Yeah.
is in itself a form of wisdom.
Right.
This brings us back to that idea of wisdom, which
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes seems to emphasize throughout these chapters.
Yes.
If we're constantly bumping up against the limits of our knowledge and this seemingly random nature of good and evil, what role does wisdom play in helping us navigate life's complexities?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Ecclesiastes tackles head on.
Okay.
But before we unpack that,
Yeah.
I think it's worth exploring how Ecclesiastes encourages us to accept life's realities,
Okay.
even the difficult ones.
Yes, because to be honest, as I read through these passages,
Yeah.
I did get a sense of, well, maybe not pessimism,
Mhm.
but a certain realism that some might find a little unsettling.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes is definitely realistic.
Yeah.
It doesn't sugarcoat the harsh truths of life,
Right.
suffering, injustice, and the inevitability of death.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about dwelling in despair.
Right.
It's about acknowledging those realities.
Yeah.
So we can move forward
Yeah.
and find meaning and joy even in the midst of them.
So it's about finding a way to live well,
Yes.
to find joy and purpose, even when we're surrounded by reminders of our own mortality
Yeah.
and the unpredictable nature of the world around us.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of acceptance comes in.
Okay.
Ecclesiastes invites us to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
the joyful and the sorrowful.
This reminds me of the passage in chapter 9, verses 7 through 9, where it talks about enjoying food and drink, finding happiness with loved ones.
Yeah.
How does that advice fit into this idea of accepting life's realities?
That's a really insightful connection. By encouraging us to savor simple pleasures, Ecclesiastes isn't advocating for a hedonistic lifestyle or anything.
Right.
It's reminding us that even amidst the struggles and uncertainties, there are still moments of beauty and pleasure to be found
Right.
and appreciated.
It's about finding joy in the everyday,
Yes.
the ordinary, and recognizing that those simple moments
Right.
are often the most precious.
Exactly.
So it's not about ignoring the difficult parts of life, but about finding a balance.
Yeah.
Recognizing that joy and sorrow can coexist.
Precisely. And remember,
Yeah.
accepting life's realities also involves recognizing the inevitability of death.
Right.
That's in verse 10 of chapter 9.
Okay.
It's a sobering reminder that our time is limited
Yeah.
and we should make the most of each day.
It's almost like a call to action to live fully and intentionally,
Right.
knowing that our time here is precious and fleeting.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that sense of urgency, that awareness of our own mortality
Yeah.
actually connects beautifully
Okay.
with the value that Ecclesiastes places on wisdom.
That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
We've talked about the limits of our knowledge, the mysteries of good and evil,
Right.
and accepting life's realities.
Yes.
Now let's dive into wisdom.
Okay.
It seems like Ecclesiastes keeps circling back to its importance,
It does.
even if it doesn't, provide all the answers.
Yeah, absolutely right.
This makes me think about this story in chapter 9, verses 16 to 18,
Okay.
about the poor wise man who saves his city but is quickly forgotten.
Yeah.
It seems like Ecclesiastes is saying that true wisdom isn't always flashy or rewarded
Right.
in the ways we might expect.
That's a very perceptive observation.
Yeah.
That story illustrates how wisdom can be overlooked,
Yeah.
undervalued, even dismissed
Yeah.
in a world that often prioritizes wealth,
Right.
power,
Mm-hmm.
and immediate gratification.
Right.
But even if it goes unnoticed by others,
Yeah.
wisdom has an inherent value.
Okay.
It helps us navigate the complexities of life, make better choices,
Yeah.
and find meaning even when external validation is lacking.
So it's about living with integrity and doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. or goes unrecognized, because true wisdom lies in the act itself, not in the external rewards.
Exactly.
And that brings us to another important aspect of wisdom: patience.
Oh, good enough.
Remember in chapter 7, verse 8, it says, "The end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than arrogance of spirit." It's a reminder that things often take time to unfold,
Right.
and that rushing or forcing things can lead to frustration and poor decisions.
It's like they're saying good things come to those who wait,
Yeah.
but it's not just about passively waiting. It's about actively cultivating patience and understanding, trusting the process,
Yeah.
even when it's challenging.
You've got it.
Yeah.
Patience in this context is about resilience,
Hmm.
about staying the course,
Yeah.
even when things get tough.
Right.
It's about trusting that there's a bigger picture at play,
Yeah.
even if we can't see it yet.
You're exactly right.
Okay, so we've got savoring simple pleasures,
Yeah.
acting with integrity, and cultivating patience.
Right.
Are there any other key insights about wisdom that we should take away from Ecclesiastes?
One more that I think is essential
Okay.
is the importance of balance.
Okay.
You remember the passage in chapter 7, verse 18?
Mm-hmm.
It says, "It is good that you grasp one thing while not letting go of the other. For one who fears God comes out with both of them."
Wow.
It's suggesting that we need to find a balance
Yeah.
between different aspects of life
Okay.
to embrace the full spectrum of human experience
Yeah.
without going to extremes.
I'm thinking about how this could apply to like work and rest,
Mm-hmm.
or pursuing our passions
Yeah.
while also attending to our responsibilities.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where we're engaged and fulfilled, but not overwhelmed or neglecting other important areas of our lives.
You're exactly right.
Okay.
It's about finding a sustainable rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
a way of living that allows us to thrive
Yeah.
in all areas of our lives without burning out
Yeah.
or losing sight of what truly matters.
So it sounds like Ecclesiastes is offering a framework for living a life that is both meaningful and sustainable.
Right.
It's not about chasing after fleeting pleasures
Yep.
or striving for unattainable perfection. It's about finding a balance
Right.
that allows us to experience joy
Yeah.
even in the face of life's inevitable challenges.
That's a really insightful way to put it.
Thanks.
It's about embracing the complexities of life,
Yeah.
finding joy in the journey,
Mm-hmm.
and living with both wisdom and humility.
Absolutely.
And I think that leads perfectly into a question
Okay.
that we should all be asking ourselves
Okay.
as we reflect on these teachings from Ecclesiastes.
What's that?
If wisdom is about navigating life's complexities
Mm-hmm.
and accepting its limitations,
Yeah.
how do you find meaning and purpose in your own life?
Yeah.
What does it mean for you to live a good life?
Okay.
Even when faced with uncertainty and suffering?
Yeah.
These are questions worth pondering.
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Absolutely.
Each of us has to find our own path,
Yeah,
our own way of making sense of the world and our place in it.
exactly.
And that journey of seeking wisdom, of finding meaning and purpose, it's a lifelong adventure.
It is.
And who knows what treasures we might uncover along the way.
Right.
We'll delve deeper into those questions and explore some more insights from Ecclesiastes in part 2. Welcome back to our deep dive into Ecclesiastes. I feel like we've already uncovered so much wisdom, but I'm also really intrigued by this question you posed at the end of the last part. How do we each find meaning and purpose in our own lives, especially when Ecclesiastes reminds us of life's limitations?
It's a question that resonates deeply, isn't it? And I think Ecclesiastes offers some clues, even if it doesn't give us like a step-by-step guide.
Right. It feels more like an invitation to explore these questions than a set of hard and fast answers.
Exactly. And one of the things that strikes me is how Ecclesiastes encourages us to find meaning by embracing the tension between our desire for purpose and the reality that we don't have all the answers.
The tension can be unsettling, can't it? On one hand, we're driven to understand the world around us, to figure out our place in it all. But then we're confronted with the limits of our knowledge, the mysteries that will probably always remain unsolved.
It's like a dance between faith and reason, wouldn't you say? We're encouraged to use our minds to question, to seek knowledge, but at the same time, we're reminded that there are things we'll never fully grasp.
And maybe that's okay. Maybe that tension is what makes life interesting.
I think so. Embracing that tension, that not knowing, is part of what it means to be human. And it's in that space between certainty and uncertainty that we can truly grow and discover meaning.
So, how do we actually live that out? How do we embrace that tension in a practical way?
Well, remember that passage we discussed earlier about enjoying simple pleasures? That's one way. It's about savoring the good things in life, appreciating the present moment, finding joy in the everyday, even when we're surrounded by reminders of life's fragility and impermanence.
Yeah, it's like Ecclesiastes is saying, hey, life is short and you don't have all the answers, so you might as well enjoy the ride.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of beauty and connection, even in the midst of challenges and uncertainty. It's about cultivating gratitude for what we have, rather than always striving for what we lack.
This also makes me think about the story of the poor wise man who saves his city but is quickly forgotten. It seems like Ecclesiastes is suggesting that true meaning isn't always about accolades or recognition.
That's a great point. That story really highlights how wisdom often operates behind the scenes. It might not always be flashy or Instagram-worthy, but it's about doing what's right, what's good, even when no one's watching.
So it's about living with integrity regardless of the outcome. It's about finding fulfillment in the act itself, not in the external validation.
Exactly. And sometimes that means being patient, trusting that things will unfold in their own time. Remember in chapter 7, verse 8, it says, "The end of a matter is better than its beginning. Patience of spirit is better than arrogance of spirit."
Patience is something I'm always working on. It's so easy to get caught up in the rush of life, wanting everything to happen right now. But Ecclesiastes seems to suggest that true wisdom involves a willingness to wait, to trust the process, to recognize that some things take time to develop.
Yes, patience is about cultivating a sense of trust, a willingness to surrender to the rhythms of life, rather than trying to force our own timeline. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most meaningful things grow slowly and quietly.
And isn't there a passage in Ecclesiastes about balance as well? I feel like that ties into this idea of living a life that is both meaningful and sustainable.
You're absolutely right. In chapter 7, verse 18, it says, "It is good that you grasp one thing while not letting go of the other, for one who fears God comes out with both of them." It's like a reminder to find that sweet spot between effort and surrender, between action and contemplation, between pursuing our goals and letting go of the need to control everything.
It's about finding a rhythm that works for us, a way of engaging with the world that allows us to experience joy and fulfillment without burning out or neglecting the things that truly matter.
Yes, it's about recognizing that life is a journey, not a destination, and that finding meaning isn't about checking off boxes or achieving some arbitrary level of success, but about embracing the richness of each experience, the highs and lows, the moments of joy and sorrow, the triumphs and setbacks.
I love that. It's about finding beauty in the messiness, the imperfections, the unexpected twists and turns that make up a life well lived.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful message, especially in a world that often feels pressure to have it all figured out, to present a perfect image, to achieve some unattainable ideal.
Ecclesiastes invites us to let go of those expectations, to embrace the complexities of life, and to find joy in the journey, even when we don't have all the answers.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Whoa.
And it reminds me of another passage in Ecclesiastes that I think speaks to this idea of letting go of the need for perfection and embracing the full spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
It's in chapter 7, verse 29.
What does it say?
"Behold, I have found only this, that God made people upright, but they have sought out many schemes."
Wow. What do you make of that?
It seems to suggest that humans have a tendency to overcomplicate things. We're always searching for answers, coming up with elaborate plans, trying to control outcomes.
Yeah.
But maybe, just maybe, true meaning lies in embracing the simplicity of our creation, in recognizing that we were made good, that we are inherently worthy, and that sometimes the best way to live is to let go of our need to control and simply be.
It's like we're hardwired for exploring, for wanting to understand. But sometimes that search leads us further away from the very thing we're looking for, peace, contentment, connection.
It's a paradox, isn't it? The more we strive for control, the more we realize how little control we actually have. And perhaps the key to finding true meaning and purpose lies in surrendering to that reality and embracing the mystery and in finding joy in the present moment.
It's about trusting that even in the midst of life's uncertainties, there's a deeper wisdom at work, a force that is guiding us even when we can't see the path ahead.
And maybe that trust, that surrender, is what allows us to experience true freedom, the freedom to be ourselves, to embrace our imperfections, to make mistakes, to learn and grow, and to find joy, in the simple act of being alive.
That's a powerful thought. It makes me wonder, what are some practical ways that we can cultivate that sense of trust and surrender in our daily lives?
That's a great question, and it's one that I think we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive into Ecclesiastes.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Ecclesiastes, and I'm still pondering that idea of surrendering to a deeper wisdom, even when things feel uncertain. It's a powerful concept, but I admit it's a bit challenging for me to wrap my head around.
It is a shift in perspective for sure. It's about moving away from that illusion of control, recognizing that there's a larger force at play, a wisdom that transcends our limited human understanding.
So if we're trying to cultivate that trust, that surrender, where do we even begin?
Well, I think one place to start is with gratitude. Remember, Ecclesiastes encourages us to savor those simple pleasures. It's not just about, indulging in those fleeting joys.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a deeper appreciation
Right.
for the gifts that we've been given, even the ones that we often take for granted.
So you're talking about things like a warm cup of coffee
Yes.
on a chilly morning, the laughter of loved ones, a beautiful sunset, the feeling of sunshine on our skin.
Exactly. Taking the time to notice and appreciate those everyday blessings can really shift our perspective from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance.
Yeah.
It helps us to recognize that even in the midst of challenges, there's still so much to be grateful for.
So gratitude becomes a way of acknowledging the good in our lives, even when things are tough. And maybe that helps us to trust that things will work out, even if we can't see how at the moment.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Gratitude can be a powerful antidote to fear and anxiety. It reminds us that we're not alone,
Yeah.
that we're supported,
Yeah.
that even in the darkest of times, there's still beauty and goodness to be found.
And that brings us back to this idea of faith, right? Trusting in something larger than ourselves,
Wow.
a force that's ultimately guiding us, even when the path ahead seems unclear.
Exactly. And I think that's a message that resonates deeply throughout Ecclesiastes. It's about finding that delicate balance between striving and surrender, between effort and acceptance.
It's about recognizing that we have a role to play in creating a meaningful life, but also acknowledging that there are forces beyond our control that are ultimately shaping our journey.
Yes. And I think that's where wisdom comes in. It's about discerning when to act, when to push forward, when to strive for our goals.
Yeah.
And it's also about knowing when to let go,
Yeah.
when to surrender to the flow of life, when to trust that things are unfolding as they should, even if we don't understand why.
So wisdom isn't just about acquiring knowledge or strategizing. It's
No.
about developing a deeper understanding of ourselves, our place in the world, and the forces that are shaping our lives.
And it's about cultivating that quiet inner voice that can guide us through life's complexities. A voice that speaks to us not through logic or reason alone, but through intuition, through feeling, through deep knowing that transcends the limits of our rational minds.
Thinking back on all the wisdom we've unpacked from Ecclesiastes, I'm struck by how relevant these ancient teachings feel even thousands of years later.
Mhm.
They speak to something fundamental about the human experience, our ongoing search for meaning and purpose in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain.
I agree. Ecclesiastes offers a timeless message of hope and resilience.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even in the face of life's inevitable challenges, we can find joy, meaning, and connection.
It does.
It encourages us to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, to live with both wisdom and humility,
Right.
and to trust that even when we don't have all the answers, there's a deeper wisdom guiding our steps.
It's a beautiful and empowering message, and I hope our deep dive into Ecclesiastes has sparked some new insights and maybe even inspired you to revisit this ancient text with fresh eyes.
And remember, the journey of seeking wisdom is a lifelong adventure. There's
Is.
always more to learn, more to discover, more to experience.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking wisdom wherever you can find it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, may you find joy in the journey and peace in the present moment.